A human saves a baby dragon. First document. Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he climbed through the twisted metal wreckage of what used to be a Galactic Council transport ship. The distress signal had been weak, barely detectable through the ion storm that had been raging across this sector for the past 3 days. As the only human rescue specialist within 50 light-years, he had volunteered to investigate while the rest of his multi-species crew waited safely aboard their ship. The crash site was a mess. Chunks of hull plating were scattered across the rocky surface of the barren moon, and the acrid smell of burned electronics filled his helmet's air recycling system. Marcus had seen plenty of crashes during his 5 years working with the Galactic Emergency Response Team, but something felt different about this one. The ship's design was unlike anything in the standard registry, with organic-looking curves and what appeared to be crystalline components fused into the hull. His scanner beeped softly, indicating life signs somewhere deeper in the wreckage. Marcus squeezed through a gap between 2 collapsed bulkheads, his human flexibility allowing him to navigate spaces that would have been impossible for most other species. The Zephyrians were too tall, the Korthak too bulky, and the crystalline Veltar too fragile for this kind of work. It was one of the reasons humans had become so valued in rescue operations despite being relative newcomers to the galactic community. The life signs grew stronger as he moved toward what had once been the ship's cargo hold. Emergency lighting flickered sporadically, casting eerie shadows that danced across the debris-strewn floor. Marcus paused when he heard something that made his blood run cold, a soft, whimpering cry that sounded almost like a wounded animal. Following the sound, he discovered a large containment unit that had somehow remained partially intact during the crash. The transparent aluminum viewing panel was cracked but not shattered, and inside he could see movement. Marcus activated his helmet's enhanced vision mode and nearly dropped his plasma cutter in shock. A baby dragon. Not the mythical creatures from Earth's ancient stories, but an actual alien species that the Galactic Council had classified as highly intelligent and extremely dangerous. The little creature was no bigger than a house cat, with iridescent scales that shifted from deep purple to brilliant gold depending on the angle of the light. Its wings were folded tightly against its body, and one of them appeared to be injured. The baby dragon's large, luminous eyes fixed on Marcus through the cracked panel, and he could swear he saw intelligence there, along with fear and pain. Marcus knew the protocols. Dragons were on the Galactic Council's restricted species list. Contact was forbidden except in extreme circumstances, and even then only specially trained xenobiologists were authorized to interact with them. The adult dragons were said to be incredibly powerful, capable of manipulating energy fields and matter at the molecular level. They were also notoriously protective of their young and had been known to destroy entire fleets when they felt threatened. But looking at the injured creature, Marcus couldn't bring himself to follow protocol. The containment unit was failing, its life support system sparking and stuttering. Whatever had been transporting this baby dragon had been taking it somewhere, probably illegally since there were no official dragon research facilities in this sector. The little creature would die if he didn't act quickly. Marcus began working on the containment unit's locks, his fingers moving swiftly over the alien control interface. His universal translator was having trouble with the symbols, but his years of experience with dozens of different technologies served him well. The Galactic Emergency Response Team hadn't chosen him just for his physical capabilities. Humans had developed a reputation for being remarkably adaptable and innovative when it came to alien technology. The locks disengaged with a soft hiss, and the containment unit's door swung open. The baby dragon didn't move at first, watching Marcus warily. He slowly extended his gloved hand, speaking in the calm, soothing tone he had learned to use with frightened survivors of all species. "Hey there, little one. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to help." The dragon tilted its head, and Marcus was surprised to hear a soft, musical sound emerge from its throat. His translator couldn't process it, but somehow the meaning seemed clear. The creature was trying to communicate. Moving very slowly, Marcus reached into his emergency medical kit and pulled out a universal healing gel that was safe for most carbon-based life forms. The baby dragon allowed him to approach, and Marcus carefully examined the injured wing. The damage wasn't severe, but it would need treatment. As he gently applied the healing gel, the dragon made that musical sound again, and this time Marcus felt something strange, a warm sensation in his mind, like a gentle touch on his thoughts. "You're telepathic, aren't you?" he whispered. The dragon's eyes seemed to brighten, and the warm feeling in his mind intensified. Marcus had heard that dragons could communicate psychically, but experiencing it firsthand was incredible. There were no words, just emotions and impressions, gratitude, relief, and something that felt remarkably like trust. Once the wing was treated, Marcus faced a difficult decision. He could leave the dragon here and report the crash according to protocol, which would likely result in the creature being taken by council scientists for study. Or he could take it with him, violating dozens of regulations but potentially saving its life. The warm presence in his mind seemed to sense his dilemma, and he felt a wave of what could only be described as hope. Marcus made his choice. He carefully lifted the baby dragon, surprised by how light it was despite its solid appearance. The creature nestled against his chest, and he could feel a gentle vibration that might have been purring. Wrapping it in an emergency thermal blanket, he began the careful journey back through the wreckage to his shuttle. As they emerged into the pale light of the moon's twin suns, Marcus activated his communicator to contact his crew. Captain HFY, a stoic Zephyrian who had been his commanding officer for 3 years, responded immediately. "Marcus, what is your status? We detected some unusual energy readings from your location." Marcus hesitated for just a moment before responding. "Crash site is clear of survivors, Captain, but I'm bringing back something unusual for medical examination. Request immediate clearance to the ship's medical bay." "Understood. Bay 3 is being prepared. Dr. Kylith will be waiting." As Marcus secured the baby dragon in his shuttle and began the short flight back to their ship, he wondered what he had gotten himself into. He was about to introduce a member of one of the galaxy's most feared species to his crew, and he had no idea how they would react. The dragon seemed to sense his anxiety and sent another wave of warm reassurance through their growing mental connection. The shuttle docked with their ship, the GSV Harmony, and Marcus made his way quickly to the medical bay. Dr. Kylith, a brilliant Veltar whose crystalline body could interface directly with medical equipment, was waiting as promised. Captain HFY stood nearby, his tall, graceful frame tense with curiosity. "What have you brought us, Marcus?" Dr. Kylith asked, her voice creating harmonic overtones that were pleasing to most species. Marcus carefully unwrapped the thermal blanket, revealing the baby dragon. The reaction was immediate and intense. Captain HFY's normally composed demeanor shattered, and he stepped backward, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. "Doctor?" Kylith's crystalline structure flickered with rapid color changes that Marcus recognized as extreme agitation. "Marcus," Captain HFY said slowly, his voice tight with control, "please tell me that is not what I think it is." The baby dragon chose that moment to stretch its wings and let out a small, melodic chirp. There was no mistaking what it was. "It's a dragon," Marcus said simply, "and it's injured. I couldn't leave it to die." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus could practically hear the mental calculations his crewmates were making, the regulations they would be breaking, the potential consequences of harboring a dragon, the danger they might all be in. But as he looked down at the small creature in his arms, feeling its trust and gratitude through their mental link, he knew he had made the right choice. What happened next would change everything, not just for Marcus and his crew, but for human-dragon relations throughout the galaxy. The baby dragon looked around the medical bay with curious eyes, taking in the strange new environment and the alien beings surrounding it. Then it did something that no one expected. It began to sing. The sound was unlike anything any of them had ever heard, a complex melody that seemed to resonate with the very structure of the ship itself. The medical equipment began to hum in harmony, and even the normally sterile air of the bay seemed to shimmer with an almost visible energy. Marcus felt the dragon's emotions through their link, and what he sensed was pure, innocent joy at being alive and safe. Captain Vexhai slowly lowered his hand from his weapon, his eyes wide with wonder. Dr. Pui. Kylith's crystalline body began to pulse with gentle, rhythmic patterns that matched the dragon's song, and Marcus realized that this moment would be remembered as the beginning of something extraordinary. The baby dragon had not just been saved, it had begun to save them all, though none of them understood how just yet. As the song continued to fill the medical bay with its otherworldly beauty, Marcus looked around at his crewmates and saw the same expression on all their faces that he felt in his own heart. Wonder. Pure, transformative wonder that would change everything they thought they knew about dragons, about humanity, and about the power of compassion to bridge even the greatest divides in the galaxy. A human saves a baby dragon. Second document. 3 days had passed since Marcus brought the baby dragon aboard the GSV Harmony, and the ship had become a very different place. The little creature, whom the crew had begun calling Ember due to the way its scales glowed when it was happy, had adapted to life aboard the rescue vessel with remarkable ease. What surprised everyone was how quickly the other crew members had adapted to having a dragon in their midst. Dr. Kylith had run every medical scan possible and declared Ember to be in perfect health, aside from the wing injury, which was healing rapidly thanks to the healing gel and the dragon's apparently accelerated recovery abilities. The Veltar doctor had been particularly fascinated by Ember's unique physiology, discovering that the dragon's scales could actually store and convert various forms of energy, from thermal to electromagnetic. Captain Vexhai had initially insisted on following proper protocol and reporting their discovery to the Galactic Council, but something strange had happened during those first few days. The baby dragon seemed to have an effect on everyone it encountered, not through any kind of mind control or telepathic manipulation, but simply through its presence. The crew found themselves more relaxed, more cooperative, and somehow more creative in their problem-solving approaches. Marcus had noticed it first during their morning briefings. Lieutenant Koros, a normally aggressive Korthak who served as their security chief, had started offering more diplomatic solutions to potential conflicts. Engineer Pip, a hyperactive glimmer whose species was known for their short attention spans, had been able to focus on complex repairs for hours at a time. Even the ship's AI, designated Area, seemed to be running more efficiently. It was during their 4th day together that everything changed. The Harmony was responding to a distress call from a mining station on the edge of Council space when their sensors detected something that made everyone's blood run cold. A destroyer-class Nethrak vessel was approaching the station at high speed. The Nethrak were one of the most feared species in the galaxy, known for their brutal efficiency and their policy of taking no prisoners. "Captain!" called out Navigator Chenti from her station. "The Nethrak ship will reach the mining station in approximately 47 minutes. At their current speed, we'll arrive roughly 10 minutes after they do." Captain Vexhai stood in the center of the bridge, his tall frame rigid with tension. The Harmony was well armed for a rescue ship, but they were no match for a destroyer-class vessel. Standard protocol would be to call for military backup and wait for a proper escort, but that would take at least 3 hours. Far too long to help the miners. "Sir," Marcus said from his position at the communications station, "I'm picking up panicked transmissions from the mining facility. They have over 200 workers, including families with children. They're requesting immediate evacuation assistance." The captain's jaw tightened. The Harmony could transport perhaps 50 beings at maximum capacity, and that would be pushing their life support systems to the limit. Even if they managed to avoid the Nethrak ship, they couldn't save everyone. Ember had been sitting quietly in a specially designed carrier that Dr. Kyleth had created, watching the bridge activities with its large, intelligent eyes. As the tension on the bridge increased, Marcus noticed the dragon becoming more agitated, its scales shifting through rapid color changes and a soft, worried chirping sound emanating from its throat. Suddenly, Ember began to sing again. This time, however, the song was different from the joyful melody they had heard in the medical bay. This was more complex, more urgent, and it seemed to carry with it images and emotions that Marcus could perceive through their telepathic link. He saw vast spaces filled with swirling energy, pathways through dimensions that ordinary minds couldn't comprehend. And something else. Hope. "Captain," Marcus said slowly, an impossible idea forming in his mind. "I think Ember is trying to tell us something important." Before Vexhai could respond, Engineer Pip's excited voice crackled over the comm system from the engine room. "Captain, you need to see this immediately. Our quantum drive efficiency just increased by 400%, and I'm detecting energy patterns I've never seen before." Dr. Kyleth, who had been monitoring Ember's vital signs from the medical bay, chimed in next. "The dragon's bioelectric field is interacting with our ship's systems in ways that should be theoretically impossible. It's somehow optimizing our energy flows and creating new neural pathways in our computer networks." As if responding to their growing understanding, Ember's song grew stronger. And suddenly everyone on the bridge could see what Marcus had been perceiving through their link. Images filled their minds of the Harmony moving through space in ways that defied conventional physics, arriving at the mining station before the Nethrak ship, creating some kind of protective field around the facility. "It's showing us how to save them," Marcus whispered, his voice filled with awe. Navigator Chenti checked her instruments and gasped. "Captain, our projected arrival time just changed. According to these readings, we can reach the mining station in 15 minutes, but that would require traveling at velocities that would tear our ship apart." "Not if we let Ember help us," Marcus said, understanding flooding through him as the dragon's intentions became clearer. "It's offering to enhance our systems, to guide us through some kind of spatial fold that will get us there safely and quickly." Captain Vexhai looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. In the 3 years they had worked together, he had learned to trust their judgment. But this was asking him to stake all their lives on the abilities of a creature they had known for less than a week. "The risks are enormous," he said quietly. "We're talking about experimental physics that we don't understand, using a dragon's abilities that are completely outside our scientific knowledge." Lieutenant Koros spoke up from his security station, his normally gruff voice surprisingly gentle. "Captain, I've been monitoring the baby's emotional state since it came aboard. There's no deception there, no hidden agenda. It genuinely wants to help. And I believe it can do what it's showing us." Engineer Pip's voice came through the comm again, crackling with excitement. "Sir, the energy readings are stabilizing into patterns that actually make sense to our systems. It's like the dragon is translating its abilities into something our technology can interface with safely," Dr. Kyleth added her analysis. "From a medical standpoint, the creature shows no signs of stress or instability. If anything, it seems more vibrant and healthy when it's using these abilities, as if helping others is fundamental to its nature." Marcus felt Ember's warm presence in his mind, and along with it came something he hadn't expected: patience. The dragon wasn't pushing them to make a decision. It was simply offering its help and waiting for them to choose. The trust implicit in that gesture was overwhelming. "All right," Captain Vexhai said finally, "but we do this carefully. Dr. Kyleth, I want you monitoring Ember constantly. If there's any sign of distress or danger, we abort immediately. Engineering prepare to interface our systems with whatever energy patterns the Dragon creates, but maintain manual overrides on all critical systems. Understood, Captain, came the chorus of responses. Marcus carefully lifted Ember from its carrier and positioned it near the main navigation console, where it could interface with the ship's primary systems. The Dragon looked up at him with those luminous eyes, and through their link, he felt its determination and compassion for the beings they were racing to save. "Whenever you're ready, little friend," Marcus said softly. Ember began to sing once more, but this time the entire ship responded. The lights dimmed and then blazed brighter than ever. The deck plating hummed with harmonious vibrations. On the view screen, space itself seemed to ripple and fold around them like fabric being gathered by invisible hands. Navigator Chenti watched her instruments in amazement as readings that should have been impossible became reality. "We're moving, Captain, but not through normal space. It's like we're traveling through a tunnel that exists between dimensions." The journey that should have taken 47 minutes was completed in 12. When the Harmony emerged from what Marcus could only describe as a fold in space-time, they found themselves positioned directly between the mining station and the approaching Nethrak vessel, which was still 30 minutes away. But their arrival hadn't gone unnoticed. "Captain," Communications Officer T-Ven reported, her voice tight with concern, "we're receiving a transmission from the Nethrak ship. They're demanding to know how we achieved our current position and what kind of technology we're using." Before anyone could respond, something even more extraordinary happened. Ember's song changed once again, and a shimmering field of energy began to form around the mining station. The field wasn't visible to the naked eye, but their sensors detected it immediately, a protective barrier that would deflect anything short of a direct assault by multiple capital ships. "The Nethrak vessel is scanning the energy field," T-Ven reported. "They're also scanning us. But their sensors can't penetrate whatever the Dragon is doing." For the first time since Marcus had known him, Captain Vexhai smiled, really smiled. "Open a channel to the mining station, tell them we're beginning emergency evacuations, and patch me through to the Nethrak vessel." "Channel open, sir." "Attention, Nethrak vessel. This is Captain Vexhai of the Galactic Emergency Response Team. This facility is under our protection during humanitarian evacuation operations. Any interference will be met with appropriate response." The reply came swiftly, the Nethrak commander's voice filled with cold fury. "Council vessel, you will explain how you achieved your current position and remove that energy field immediately, or we will consider your actions an act of war." Captain Vexhai looked down at Ember, who was maintaining its protective song while somehow managing to look both determined and serene. Through Marcus, the Dragon sent a simple message that everyone on the bridge could somehow understand. The barrier would hold as long as they needed it to, and the evacuation could proceed safely. "Nethrak Commander," Vexhai replied calmly, "humanitarian law supersedes territorial claims. We will complete our mission regardless of your threats." What followed was a tense 30-minute standoff during which the Harmony managed to evacuate all 237 beings from the mining station. The Nethrak ship remained at a distance, its commander apparently deciding that discretion was the better part of valor when faced with technology they couldn't understand or counter. As the last shuttle load of evacuees was brought aboard, Ember's song gradually faded and the protective field around the station dissolved. The baby dragon looked exhausted but content, its scales glowing with soft, satisfied light. "Navigation," Captain Vexhai ordered. "Prepare for departure. Take us to the nearest council station where we can transfer our passengers to safety." As the Harmony moved away from the mining station, now empty but intact, Marcus cradled Ember in his arms and felt the Dragon's emotions through their link. There was tiredness, yes, but also profound satisfaction and something that felt very much like joy. The little creature had not only saved hundreds of lives, but had also demonstrated capabilities that would change how the galaxy viewed dragons forever. "Marcus," Captain Vexhai said quietly, approaching them, "I owe you an apology. When you first brought Ember aboard, I thought you had made a dangerous mistake. Now I see that you may have done the most important thing any of us will ever do." Through the view screen, they could see the Nethrak vessel finally beginning to withdraw, apparently unwilling to pursue a ship capable of technology they couldn't comprehend or combat. The mining station floated safely in space, a testament to the power of compassion and cooperation between species that most of the galaxy believed could never coexist. But Marcus knew this was just the beginning. Word of what had happened would spread throughout the Galactic Council, and everything they thought they knew about dragons was about to change. The question was, would the rest of the galaxy be ready for the truth about these remarkable beings? A human saves a baby dragon. Third document. 2 weeks after the mining station incident, the GSV Harmony found itself docked at Centauri Station, one of the largest diplomatic and commercial hubs in the galaxy. What should have been a routine stop to transfer evacuees had turned into something much more significant. Word of their encounter with the Nethrak vessel and the mysterious energy field that had protected the mining station had spread throughout the Galactic Council faster than anyone had anticipated. Marcus stood in the station's main diplomatic hall, watching through a massive viewport, as ships from dozens of different species arrived at what was supposed to be a closed hearing. Ember sat perched on his shoulder, having grown considerably in the past 2 weeks, though it was still small enough to be easily carried. The dragon's presence had become as natural to him as breathing, their telepathic bond having deepened to the point where they could communicate complex ideas without words. "Quite the crowd gathering out there," observed Captain Vexhai as he joined Marcus at the viewport. "I count at least 15 different species represented, including some I haven't seen at diplomatic functions in years." Dr. Kyleth approached them, her crystalline form flickering with patterns that Marcus had learned indicated deep concern. "The preliminary hearings have been challenging. Several species are demanding that Ember be turned over to the Council Science Division for study, while others are insisting that dragons should be classified as a threat to galactic security." Marcus felt a wave of anxiety from Ember through their link, and gently stroked the dragon's scales in reassurance. Over the past 2 weeks, they had learned so much about each other. Ember's species, Marcus had discovered, were not the violent, territorial creatures that galactic mythology portrayed them as. They were actually highly empathetic beings who instinctively wanted to help others, but centuries of misunderstanding and fear had driven them into hiding. "Any word from the Dragon Consortium?" Captain Vexhai asked. "That's the most interesting development," Dr. Kyleth replied. 3 hours ago, we received a transmission from a ship that identified itself as belonging to the Dragon Consortium, a governing body that most of the galaxy thought was a legend. They're requesting permission to attend the hearing." Marcus's eyes widened. Through his link with Ember, he had sensed that adult dragons were aware of what was happening, but he hadn't expected them to reveal themselves so openly. The little dragon on his shoulder chirped softly, and Marcus felt a complex mixture of emotions: excitement, nervousness, and something that felt very much like pride. "They're coming for Ember?" Marcus asked. "According to their message, they're coming to meet you," Dr. Kyleth said, with what passed for a smile in her species. "Apparently, what you've done has caused quite a stir among the dragon communities." Before Marcus could respond, Lieutenant Koros appeared at their group, his normally fierce expression softened by what Marcus had learned to recognize as the calming effect that Ember had on aggressive personalities. "Captain, the Council representatives are ready to begin the formal hearing. They're requesting that Marcus and Ember present themselves immediately." The diplomatic hall was packed beyond capacity when they entered. Representatives from dozens of species filled the curved seating arrangements, while holographic displays showed the locations of hundreds more participating remotely. At the center of the hall sat the five-member arbitration panel, including a stern-looking Altarian whose species was known for their rigid adherence to regulations. "Marcus Chen of Earth," announced arbitrator Kelthon, the Altarian panel leader. "You stand accused of violations of Galactic Regulation 847 Alpha regarding contact with restricted species, failure to report the discovery of a Class X life form, and endangering civilian populations by engaging unknown alien technology in a crisis situation. How do you respond to these charges?" Marcus stepped forward, Ember still perched on his shoulder. The dragon's calming presence helped steady his nerves as hundreds of eyes focused on them. "Honored arbitrators, I saved a life. Everything that followed came from that simple choice." A murmur ran through the assembled crowd, and several species representatives began speaking at once until arbitrator Kelthon called for order. "The question before this panel is not your motivations, Human Chen, but the consequences of your actions. Your unauthorized contact with a dragon has resulted in the exposure of capabilities that could fundamentally alter the balance of power in our galaxy." "If I may," interrupted a new voice, one that seemed to resonate with harmonic frequencies that made everyone in the hall fall silent. At the rear of the chamber, a section of the wall that had appeared to be decorative paneling suddenly shimmered and revealed itself to be an advanced transport portal. Three figures stepped through the portal, and the entire assembly gasped in unison. They were dragons, but not the small, innocent creature that Ember represented. These were adults, magnificent beings that stood nearly 3 meters tall, with scales that seemed to contain entire galaxies of swirling light and energy. Their presence filled the hall with a sense of ancient wisdom and barely contained power. "I am Syrax, speaker for the Dragon Consortium," announced the lead figure, their voice creating harmonious overtones that made even the translation systems struggle to keep up. "And I am here to address the misconceptions that have shaped galactic policy for far too long." Arbitrator Kelthon looked as stunned as everyone else in the hall, but managed to maintain his composure. "Speaker Syrax, your species has had no official contact with the Galactic Council for over 800 years. Your presence here is highly irregular." "Our absence was a choice," Syrax replied, their gaze sweeping across the assembled representatives. "For centuries, we watched as fear and misunderstanding painted us as monsters to be avoided or weapons to be controlled. We chose isolation over conflict, hoping that wisdom would eventually overcome prejudice." Ember chirped softly and launched itself from Marcus's shoulder, gliding gracefully across the hall to land near the adult dragons. The reunion was clearly emotional, even across species lines. Marcus felt waves of joy, relief, and overwhelming love through their mental connection. "What changed your minds?" asked arbitrator Velanya, a Centaurian whose species was known for their diplomatic skills. "This human," Syrax said simply, turning their luminous gaze toward Marcus. "When young Ember was stolen from our nursery world and destined for illegal experimentation, we followed at a distance, prepared to intervene if necessary. But we were not prepared for what we witnessed." The dragon moved gracefully to where Marcus stood, and despite the massive difference in their sizes, knelt so they were at eye level. "You could have followed your regulations and left Ember to die. You could have turned our child over to your authorities for study and advancement. Instead, you chose compassion over protocol, and in doing so, you demonstrated the very qualities that we had hoped to find in the younger species of the galaxy." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I just did what felt right." "And that," said another of the adult dragons, "is precisely why our species has decided to end our isolation. For 800 years, we have waited for signs that the galaxy had grown beyond its fear-based responses to the unknown. Your actions, and the response of your crew have shown us that such growth is possible. Arbitrator Kelthon struggled to maintain control of the proceedings. Speaker Sirax, while this is certainly a historic moment, we still must address the regulatory violations and potential security implications of unauthorized dragon technology being deployed during the mining station incident. Syrax's expression became stern, and the temperature in the hall seemed to drop several degrees. Arbitrator, I believe you misunderstand the situation. There were no violations because there were no regulations being broken. Ember acted according to the deepest principles of our species, to protect innocent life wherever possible. The technology you speak of is not something that can be weaponized or replicated. It comes from a conscious choice to help others, powered by emotional and spiritual connections that cannot be artificially created. Dr. Kyleth stepped forward, her crystalline form pulsing with excited patterns. If I may, arbitrators, my medical examination of Ember revealed something remarkable. The energy manipulation abilities that dragons possess are directly tied to their emotional state and their genuine desire to help others. Attempts to force or control these abilities would be not only futile, but would actually diminish their effectiveness. "You're saying dragons can't be weaponized?" asked Lieutenant Koros, speaking for the first time since entering the hall. "Correct," Sirax replied. "Our abilities grow stronger with trust, cooperation, and mutual respect. They weaken in the presence of fear, aggression, or attempts at coercion. This is why we have remained hidden for so long. Most species' first instinct upon encountering us is to try to capture and control us, which makes meaningful cooperation impossible." Captain Vexhai stepped forward. "Honored arbitrators, in my 3 years of working with Marcus Chen, I have learned that humans possess a remarkable ability to see beyond surface appearances and connect with beings from any species. If dragons require emotional connections and trust to work effectively with others, then perhaps humanity's natural empathy makes them ideal partners for establishing dragon-galactic community relations." A wave of excited chatter ran through the assembly as representatives began to grasp the implications of what was being discussed. The possibility of dragon cooperation could revolutionize everything from medical technology to space travel, but only if it was approached through partnership rather than exploitation. "What exactly are you proposing, Speaker Sirax?" asked Arbitrator Velanya. "The Dragon Consortium offers to establish formal diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council, with one condition. Marcus Chen and any other humans willing to serve in this capacity will act as liaisons between our species. We have observed that humans possess a natural ability to form the kind of emotional bonds that make our cooperation possible." Ember flew back to Marcus's shoulder and nuzzled against his neck, sending waves of affection and gratitude through their mental link. Through that connection, Marcus suddenly understood the full scope of what was being offered. Dragons didn't just want to end their isolation. They wanted to help the galaxy grow beyond its current limitations, to become something greater than the sum of its parts. "I accept," Marcus said without hesitation. "Not just for myself, but I know there are other humans who would be honored to serve in this role." Arbitrator Kelthon looked around at his fellow panel members, then at the assembly of species representatives who were already beginning animated discussions about the possibilities this development presented. "Very well. Given the extraordinary circumstances and the potential benefits to all council members, this panel hereby dismisses all charges against Marcus Chen and formally recognizes the Dragon Consortium as a provisional member of the Galactic Council, pending completion of standard diplomatic protocols." The hall erupted in cheers from some quarters and concerned murmurs from others, but the overall mood was one of excitement and possibility. As the formal session ended and representatives began clustering in small groups to discuss this new development, Marcus found himself surrounded by Syrax and the other adult dragons. "You have done something remarkable, Marcus Chen," Cyrax said, their voice warm with approval. Not only did you save one of our children, but you have opened a door that has been closed for centuries. Your species' natural empathy and courage will serve as a bridge between our peoples. Through his link with Ember, Marcus felt the dragon's emotions shift to something that could only be described as excitement for the future. The little dragon had grown during its time with the crew of the Harmony, not just physically, but emotionally and intellectually. It was becoming a bridge between two species, a living symbol of what cooperation and understanding could achieve. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now," Cyrax replied, "we begin the real work. There will be cultural exchange programs, joint research initiatives, and exploration projects that will push the boundaries of what any species thought possible. But most importantly, there will be friendship, real, deep connections between beings who were once taught to fear each other." As Marcus left the diplomatic hall with Ember still perched on his shoulder, he reflected on how much his life had changed since that moment in the crashed ship when he had chosen compassion over protocol. What had started as a simple rescue had become the foundation for a new era of galactic cooperation. The galaxy would never be the same, and Marcus couldn't wait to see what they would build together. Through his mental link with Ember, he felt the dragon's agreement and excitement for the adventures that lay ahead. They had proven that sometimes the most important choice you can make is simply to care about someone else's well-being, regardless of the consequences. And in a galaxy that often seemed too large and complex for any individual to make a difference, that was a lesson that would resonate across countless worlds for generations to come.